Winner, winner, chicken dinner. I had a really quick impromptu contest on my Instagram page at Rob Dahm for people to guess how much horsepower this mean stock car would put out. Check that out after the dyno footage to see who won. This is probably a dream moment for me in my garage. I have two of the most iconic 90s Japanese sports cars in here, and instead of having the old Lincoln, I've got a much smaller, but yet still beefy R32 GTR right here. Although it's brand new to me here in the States, this is a 26-year-old car, and before we put it up on the dyno and blow that RB26, let's make sure she's ready for the adventure. First thing I'm gonna check is tires. You notice it's some sort of random Japanese named branded tire, and it looks generally in good condition from a distance. A little bit closer, you can tell that this is a slightly older tire. There is a little bit of dry rot, enough to say that these tires need to be replaced soon, but I think I'll be okay on a dyno. If not, you guys get to watch my mistakes. You can tell that there's enough tread and whatnot for potential rain, but it's the dry rot that gives me just a little bit of concern. So the very first thing we need to do is look at the engine bay and see if it's in good condition, any frayed wires. Everything looks very clean. This is a very solid imported car. But let's check the oil. There's the oil fill. Down here is the oil level. It's a little dark. Certainly a little dark. I'm gonna replace the oil before we go out to the dyno. That's definitely needs to happen here. You can tell it's also full because the oil gauge on the dash shows you oil pressure. You'd be out of oil if you didn't have oil pressure. Something else is, of course, brake fluid. Not that you really need to use brakes on a dyno, you let the thing wind down by itself, but you can tell that we're solid, it's clean. Your brake fluid, at least on the RX-7 and most manual cars, is also your clutch fluid, your master-slave clutch line. So that's a really good sign there. So this is the coolant reservoir. If your coolant system's working properly, you should have fluid inside of here, and sure enough we do. It's between the max and min line. The car hasn't been driven, so it's cold, and we're looking good there. Of course, especially with RX-7s, when you have issues with the coolant system, this might not always indicate that the car has coolant, but we're looking good here. Even if the coolant reservoir isn't working properly, you have to check the radiator cap right here. If it's malfunctioning, it won't give you the right results, but in this case, sure enough, we've got a full radiator. Normally, on most cars, it's not that easy to tell, but we're looking in good shape with the coolant system. To get proper baseline horsepower of the stock car, you need to make sure that the air filter's fresh and ready to go. There we go. There we go. A very clean, it looks like a modern type of air filter. Oh, there's some shit in it. Overall, this is impressively clean. It's certainly something that I feel good using to get a solid baseline on the car. I'm coming from an experience of rotor engines, so the spark plugs are very easily accessible. This is a piston engine, the RB26, and it's hidden. You guys have covers. These piston engines all have covers, so we need to take this cover off to get to the spark plugs to make sure that they're gapped properly and the wires are fine. That was way more work than I ever want to do on this car. The RB26 is an inferior motor to the rotary engine from my point of view, because you have the cover and then you have your coil over, your coil on pack on top of the piston. This is actually very similar to the Diablo. And then finally, deep in this dark crevice is the spark plug. Let's see what the first one yields for us. First, notice it's not over cranked, which is a good sign that the previous person isn't beating the shit out of the car. Yeah, so the contacts, everything looks fairly good. This is, it's a decent plug too. I don't see anything too irregular, looks pretty standard. So I'm gonna go ahead and check the other 5 in a row and make sure they're in basically the same condition as this one. So it's pretty apparent that KR Imports did a good job selecting this car and getting it prepped for sale. I'm gonna go ahead and put this one back together and meet you guys at the dyno. So we're out here at BCP, Boost Controlled Performance, and you can hear it's a little echoey, but we have my little bone stock Nissan GTR BN R32 ready to give us a baseline of what a 26-year-old car can do. This car has no modifications, no air intake differences. The only thing on this has an aftermarket stereo. What we're going to be doing is disconnecting the center diff or the Altezza system, so that way Dyno's only rear-wheel drive, so the all-wheel drive system won't necessarily interfere, and change and adjust. Not bad. The very first run we had wheel slip, so it maxed out at 130 horsepower. But once the wheels dried up, we got almost 250 horsepower at the tires, which is pretty impressive for a bone stock car that was supposed to be 280 at the crank, and 26 years later. And we're back. Who won? Well, let's look at the numbers. As you saw, the car put out a impressive 246.9 horsepower, and sure enough, Mitch Webb 16 guessed 246 flat. And I was gonna go whatever the horsepower was, it was give or take, plus or minus. So you guessed the whole digits. You were off on the torque, but you're the closest even when you take the difference of both of those. So Mitch, you've won a Dahm shirt. If you want this one, that's kind of creepy, but you're more than welcome to it. Just message me on Instagram, and or if not, I'll message you, and you've got a shirt out for you.